So these two chapters in Igeres haTeshuva, which we're learning now, which is the Alter Rebbe's treatise of tshuva. And like I told you in one of the earlier classes, that this very much is in line with the overall theme of Tanya, that for this thing, Torah is near you, and not just near you, but very near you. Karev mioid, that's a pasuk in the Torah. Not only is it regarding who we are, nefesh alikis, nefesh abamis, the koiches nefesh, the faculties, the garments, the instruments, the tools, the machshava dibur ma'aseh, everything that's discussed in the first section of Tanya, and not only the ideas of faith in God, reconciliation of God and the universe, which is the theme of the second section of Tanya, Shara Yichud Emunah, but now in the third section, Igeres haTeshuva, the Rebbe once said, and he believes and understands, that the Alter Rebbe's cover page, the title page, isn't just for Chelik Aleph of Tanya, Likutei Amorim, Sefer Shel Beinanim. And it's not just for Shara Yichud, but it's also for Igeres haTeshuva. As it's known that the Alter Rebbe was the one who composed and wrote Tanya, and he wrote these three sections. The upcoming section, which Isser is so eagerly waiting to study, Igeres HaKodesh, that the children of the Alter Rebbe took letters that the Alter Rebbe wrote to Yidden and Hasidim and Yidden, primarily about giving tzedakah to Eretz Yisrael, and attached it, connected it to the printing during their time of Tanya. But initially, when Tanya was printed the first time, and during the Alter Rebbe's lifetime, I don't believe that the fourth section, Igeres HaKodesh, was printed. That was put later by the children who felt it was important. And when we get to learn about those letters, I think you'll understand why. But going back to the theme of this Igeres haTeshuva, this is kind of the culmination. This is what I want to bring out. This is the culmination of the Beinani. The culmination of the Beinani is the tshuva. Now you'll probably say, well, tshuva should be before. I'm not going into that analysis now. Why is Igeres haTeshuva the third section? When the Alter Rebbe had the Tanya printed, and the way it was printed, the Igeres haTeshuva was the third section. Right? Remember, we had a discussion when we were learning Shara Yichud Emunah. The Alter Rebbe says the term Kemoshe Yizba'er, as will be explained. And if we look up those references, we see that refers to the first section in Tanya, Sefer Shel Beinanim. So the explanation that the Rabbeim gave to that is that initially in thought, the Alter Rebbe wanted to print Shara Yichud Emunah first, and then Likutei Amorim. But B'Poyel, when it came time to print, for whatever reason, he switched it around. But the language of Kemoshe Yizboer, not Kemoshe Nizboer with a nun. Kemoshe Nizboer would mean as we explained, which would be the more correct language when you're printing Shara Yichud as the second section to Likutei Amorim. Why does it say Kemoshe Yizboer? So the Rabbeim say, because the Alter Rebbe originally thought of printing that first, but he didn't for whatever reason. But Igeres haTeshuva, everyone agrees, was the third section. And as I think I told you, there's also the version of Igeres haTeshuva in Madura Kama. This whole Tanya, all three, there's an earlier version that's not today's version, that's known as Madura Kama. And the Rebbe in 1981, I believe, gave instructions to print it, which you have to understand, that's a very big chiddush. Why? this is the Tanya. You don't want to confuse people with other versions. This was the version, the final version the Alter Rebbe chose. And the Rebbe in 1981 said, no. He said, let's print the first version, Madura Kama. And because there are things there, nuances that explain things in Tanya that are not explained in the Tanya as we have it now. And this was I remember this was such an important project to the Rebbe. He wanted it printed very quickly. I forget by which date. It's Kislev or Pesach, I forget now. And he had a staff working on it literally around the clock because the timing was so short to get it done, and they got it done. And it could be the Rebbe gave each one a signed copy of that Tanya. So that's called Madura Kama. So Madura Kama has also another version with slight imitations of Igeres haTeshuva. That's important to know. We're not, my mashpir of Melech Tzibel in Maristown was of that genius. He was able to see the differences and talk and explain. Average people, like us learning Tanya, we wouldn't pick up on a lot of the fine nuances. Rabbi Yoyo, people who are very steeped in Chassidus and have a great background can understand the nuance of a vav, a no vav, even if it's just a difference in a vav. For example, what would be the difference? Because making up gematrias it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about havana, chabad, understanding with seichel, the difference between adding a vav or not. Anyway. But going back to Igeres haTeshuva, the Alter Rebbe, I just want to, the first two chapters are like the halachic part of tshuva. And the Alter Rebbe says that according to the Torah, min ha-Torah, azivas achet belvad, forsaking sin and saying, I won't sin again, you're about teshuva. And I forgot to mention, it's important to mention, the Gemara supports that. The Gemara says, when it comes to Kiddushin, or maybe I mentioned it, but it's worth mentioning again. When it comes to marrying a woman, and someone is a Rasha, he's known to be a Rasha. A Rasha, to marry Al Pi Din, it's an invalid Kiddushin. I said it, I remember now, regarding witnesses. But I think the Gemara says it regarding the man himself marrying the woman. So someone who has a hidur tshuva under the chuppah, he says to himself, I'm doing tshuva, I'm becoming about tshuva, I'm not doing the sin anymore. The Gemara says, it's a good kiddushin. It's a Gemara in kiddushin. What do we see? That the thought of saying, I won't do this anymore, has a chalois. Chalois is the term used in Talmudic circles. In the yeshiva world, the idea it has an impact, it has an effect, a chalois. And the chalois is that Kedushin is a good Kedushin. But the man has been sinning till he came under the chuppah. He was known as the sinner of sinners. He makes a hidur tshuva, the Gemara says. He has a real thought of tshuva, his tshuva is accepted. So that's the first idea, and we call that Baal Teshuvah. Okay? So Baal Teshuvah is Azivas Achet Bilvad Min HaTorah, according to the Alter Rebbe. Then the Alter Rebbe says there's what we call Shleimus haTeshuva. I showed you yesterday the language where the Alter Rebbe says it. The completion of tshuva. The taking of tshuva and making it, beautifying it. How? Through kapara. Kapara means, we translated Yom Kippur, to forgive, to atone, but kapara means to rinse away, to wash away the schmutz and filth that was created by the stain, by the sin. For that, the Mishnah says in Yuma, the Alter Rebbe begins Igeres haTeshuva this way, Shloishe mini kapara. There are three elements of kapara. One for a mitzvah say that you didn't do a positive commitment that you're supposed to do. 2, for a mitzvah lo seseh that you weren't supposed to do, violate, and you violated. And 3, for a mitzvah lo seseh that has its punishment, krisis or Mrs. Bezdin, excision and execution by Bezdin, etc. So those three categories are all details in kapara, not details in tshuva. They're details in kapara, or if you want to say, in shleimus haTeshuva, in complete tshuva. But in English, the words complete tshuva implies that tshuva, azivas achet bilvad, is not tshuva. That's wrong. It is tshuva. Baal tshuva is azivas achet. You're about tshuva as soon as you say, I'm not doing this again, and you really mean it. You're about teshuva. And all the virtues that are attributed to about teshuva are for that teshuva. And for that, you don't need Yom Kippur. Like I told you, Rabbi Elazar, you sinned with every woman in the world and everything else that he did. As the Gemara says, go, he gave a scream, and he said, Ay, Hashem, I'm yours, I return to you. And he died b'tshuva. Rebbe says, b'sha'achad, in one moment, in one turn, he became about teshuva. That's pure tshuva, about teshuva. Then there is kapara. And kapara, the Alter Rebbe teaches, is something that tshuva wants and needs. Because if you don't get rid of the stain, there's always a stain. So yes, here, your kiddushin is a good kiddushin. You can become a kosher edus. That's all halachically true, but you have a stain. You have baggage, and you want to get rid of that baggage. The Alter Rebbe says, okay. The Mishnah gives us ways how to do that. That was pretty much chapter 1 and part of 2. The last part of chapter 2, he speaks about tinius, fasting. And he says that fasting isn't part of kapara. Vidui, confession, is charot al ha'ovar, regretting what I did in the past, getting rid of the stain. Those are all part of kapara, but fasting is not. So what is fasting? So the Alter Rebbe taught us yesterday, fasting is like the korban. You bring the sacrifice. What do we know? That the korban oila was brought to accomplish v'nirtza loi. You become favorable in Hashem's eyes. And we explained that at length yesterday, so we're not going to take the time now. But this concept is a third nekuda hisser, okay? Baal teshuva, kapara, and now v'nirtza loi, korban / tinus, fasting. So this is where we're at now. And the Alter Rebbe already had told us that tinus has various purposes. One was, which he said in the first chapter, to annul a decree. If there's a decree, God forbid, on a person, or God forbid on a community, and it's like, through fasting, we have the ability to annul the decree. Here, in chapter 2, the Alter Rebbe says a higher aspect of fasting, and that is to become favorable in God's eyes more than we were by doing tshuva, but to be v'nirtza loi, to be even greater, favorable. So turn now to page Tzadik Beis, and it's about 7 lines from the top. After the word on the line begins v'kohena rabbis, and there's a period, and we're at that word v'al, the third word on that line of kohena rabbis. V'yisoid ze limad ha'arizal l'talmidov. Based on this concept, on this foundation, on this yesod, the Arizal taught his students al pi chochmas ha'emes, based on the wisdom of truth, which refers to Kabbalah, Misper hatzoymois lekame avoinus v'chatoyim. The precise amount of fasts for various transgressions. Av she'ein behen koros v'lo misas bezdin. Although these types of transgressions are not punishable by excision or execution, bidei shemayim. It's called misa bidei shemayim, not execution. Death from heaven. K'moy alakas. For example, the Arizal says, for anger. Are you guys ready? Kuf nun aleph tainiyos. You have to fast 151 fasts. Have you ever seen or heard someone do this? Well, there are people that do this, my friends. How do they do it? Isser, primarily in the winter. In the winter, when the day is short, so chatzos, midday could be 11:30, a quarter to 12, and they get up, phase 7, 8, 9. So they have a few hours and they don't eat. Right? So if the Karl Bach Shul and Ramat Bet Shemesh are still having a minyan 11, 12 o'clock, and you roll out of bed 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, and you go into the Karl Bach Shul and you're down, by the time you finish, it's 11:30, 12, and you go home and eat. Guess what? You fasted a half a day. And if you do that 151 times, or I'm not sure, is it considered a full day or half a day? I forget now. But somehow you can do these 151 fasts. So the Arizal taught his Talmidim, it says, based on this concept that tainus is important to become favorable in Hashem's eyes. He taught them and he revealed to them the particular amount of fast for particular sins. And Dr. Rebbe gives the example of kas. And even regarding a rabbinic prohibition, for example, drinking plain wine, meaning wine that was made by non-Jews, Yisane ayin gimel tainiyos. For that sin of drinking non-kosher wine, fast 73 fasts. Okay? And there are people that do this. But they do it at least once in their lifetime. And they have a mind. I know that I drank non-kosher wine once, and I want that stain to be removed, so I'm going to fast 73 fasts. Okay. So too, regarding the desecration of the positive commandment, the rabbinic positive commandment, the Rabbon, in other words, k'may tefillah, right? Tefillah, prayer, the Rambam writes, when you have a need, you say to Hashem, help me, that's prayer. But the idea of davening 3 times a day, and the idea of davening bisman, and all that is midrabanan. Says the Alter Rebbe that even for desecrating the rabbinic mitzvah of tefillah, Yisane, you should fast Samach Aleph Tainiyos v'chulu. 61 fasts. So we got 151. We have 73, and now he tells us about 61 fasts. What's the Alter Rebbe? Why is he saying this? He's pointing out to us, I want to make it clear, that fasting for certain prohibitions, the Arizal taught his students this. That means he encouraged them to do this. Why? Because he wants them not only to do tshuva min haTorah, and not only to have kapara, but he wants them to become V'nirtza loi. You see, v'nirtza, so let me make this clear. Okay, I'll clarify that after we finish. Let me just go further. V'derech klal, so the Alter Rebbe now finished with kind of citing the Arizal, telling us what the Arizal did regarding fasting. V'derech klal soida tainus is gula niflo lizgalus rotzen elyon baruch hu. Generally speaking, these are the Alter Rebbe's words. The secret, the esoteric idea of fasting is a sgula niflo, is a wondrous remedy for the revelation of the supernal will of God, blessed be He. Just like a carbon, look, a carbon shenemar boy, which it's written about a carbon, that when you brought a carbon, it's that you caused reach nichayach l'Hashem, a pleasant odor for Hashem. And as it says in the prophet Yeshaya, quote, this is when they sinned and they brought sacrifices showing how good they are. So Shaya, it says there, Hashem says, this is what you call a fast, and this is what you call a day that's Rotzen Hashem, is God's special day. God's happy with this? Absolutely not. So what do we see? That the opposite is true. This type of fast in Yeshaya, in that particular situation, is not a Yom Rotzen Hashem. But other types of fasts, which are sanctioned and are holy, are considered Yom Rotzen Hashem. Michlal, look, that's what he says. Michlal, from the verse in Yeshaya we understand, Shatzoyim Hanitza, that a favorable fast, a fast that is positive, Hu Yom Rotzen, it is a day that's favorable. Now, what we understand from this last section here is that there's two aspects to fasting. One is to become favorable in Hashem's eyes vis-a-vis getting rid of a vestige of the stain, any vestige of the stain. That's why you have to fasting to 151 for anger, 73 for drinking non-kosher wine, 50 and 61 for tefillah, prayer violations of rabbinic nature. In other words, even though you did tshuva, even though you did shleimus haTeshuva kapara, you still need the fasting. Not for tshuva, not for kapara, but to become v'nirtza loi. Then the Alter Rebbe says there's another type of v'nirtza loi, which is he calls soid hatainis. Why does he use the word soid? The Rebbe explained this once. And the language is that it brings you l'rotzen l'fnei Hashem. Why? Because it's not about sins. The concept, the secret of fasting is to put you in another place, in a place that transcends, which is what we call rotzen. Look at the language, rotzen ha'elyon. You want to reach rotzen ha'elyon, you do the fasting. The fasting, in other words, velvel. You're not obligated to fast. You're not obligated to fast, right? You're not obligated to fast. Yet, you take upon yourself to fast. That's transcending. That's going beyond the norm, beyond teva. Then you become v'nirtza loi. So this is a continuation of the Alter Rebbe's general concept. If you ask someone, what's the chidush, what's the novelty of Igeres haTeshuva, chapter 2, the answer is v'nirtza loi. To reach the state and understand the v'nirtza loi becoming favorable in Hashem's eyes. Any questions? Ask me now if you have any questions, or you could do it later. Okay? This 2 chapters, there's a lot of halacha and Talmud in it. You know, we did it very, very briefly. And as I said, the Rebbe after his mother passed away, he spent farbrengens upon farbrengens going into details and details. So I shared a little bit. There's much more. And the main thing is we should have a good Shabbos. It's Shabbos from Vorach and Tammuz, for us Lubavitch Chassidim, and for the world. It's the Yahrzeit of the Rebbe coming up Gimel Tammuz, so this is the Shabbos that blesses it. It's a time to a little focus and to understand what the Rebbe wanted of us, what he wants of Klal Yisrael, what he gives Klal Yisrael, and mostly is what am I going to do for it? You know? Right? The Rebbe's a big tzaddik, but all tzaddikim, they need us, they want us. And the Rebbe said, a few years before he passed away, I've done whatever I can to bring Mashiach, it's up to you. And a lot of people said, hey, he was just explaining what the reality is. If we don't do it ourselves, Mashiach here, Mashiach there, it ain't getting done. What Hashem will do, Hashem can do anything. But we have an achrayus, we have a responsibility. Say, Chevra, take the bull by the horn, shape him up, ship him out, and bring Mashiach. Have a great Shabbos. See everyone next week.
Amen.
Bye-bye.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.